La semaine dernière, à Paris, le week-end dernier, en fait, il y a eu un symposium organisé sur le thème 80 ans après la libération d'Auschwitz, penser le fait génocidaire. Le réalisateur franco-israélien Eyal Sivan y a dit « Ce n'est pas qu'Israël instrumentalise la mémoire d'Auschwitz. Israël est l'instrumentalisation de la mémoire d'Auschwitz. » Ben Gurion, le père fondateur de l'État d'Israël, a également dit « C'est Auschwitz et l'extermination qui a justifié la création de l'État d'Israël. » Auteur du documentaire Iskor, les esclaves de la mémoire, Eyal a également ajouté « La mémoire n'est pas un vaccin pour toute une génération contre la commission de crimes. Et c'est peut-être même l'opposé. La mémoire est une justification pour commettre d'autres crimes, parce qu'elle apporte cette innocence qui justifie tout. » Excusez-moi, j'avais mis le mot en anglais, alors en français, this misuse, cette mauvaise utilisation de la mémoire se passe bien sûr aussi dans d'autres circonstances. Can I continue in English? Maybe I will also start again in English, or maybe not. We. So, today, under that title that frightened some prestigious Luxembourg cultural center, Exploiting Memory, the Holocaust and the Distortion of Antisemitism, we will look deeper in this phenomenon, instrumentalization of the memory, and its dire consequences here and there. Thanks to 3 Jewish Israeli women who know what they are talking about and are not afraid to talk about it. Thanks to their research, their writings, their experiences, their commitment, they convey a precise, well-founded, and uncompromising message. We are honored to have them with us, here, Ilar, and then online, Amira and Nurit. So we will start with Amira, who will address the topic, merchandising the Holocaust or the killing of history. Hi, Amira. So let me say just a few words on who you are. Even if everyone following the situation in Palestine and Israel for a certain time has already read your articles in Haaretz, the equivalent of the French daily Le Monde for French-speaking people. Amira has dedicated much of her career to covering Palestinian affairs in Gaza and the West Bank, where she has resided for nearly 3 decades. As the daughter of Holocaust survivors, her perspective is deeply rooted in a history of resilience and activism. Amira, we are listening to you.
And as I said, I cannot think of a better way to commemorate the victims of the Nazi industry of murder than this one, a gathering with other people who reflect on that period with pain, but who also reject the manipulation done of the Holocaust. This manipulation that we'll dedicate our evening, we'll dedicate our evening for this manipulation, has been headed for years by my state, Israel. But unfortunately, it is assisted, this manipulation is assisted by other governments, by pressure groups and academic institutions the world over. I borrowed the expression merchandising the Holocaust from my late parents. Both were survivors. My mother was born in Sarajevo, and then she was incarcerated in the concentration camp of Bergen-Belsen in Germany during the last year and the worst year of its existence. My father and his family were deported from their hometown in Romania to a ghetto in the Ukraine. Both my parents were liberated by the Red Army. And then in late 48 and beginning of 1949, they emigrated to Israel. In 1982, when Israel invaded Lebanon, in order to fight the PLO and the Palestinians in their refugee camps there, the Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin and his people, his party, equated Yasser Arafat, the leader of PLO, with Hitler. I remember my parents boiling with anger. They did not miss any demonstration against the war, and they also wrote and distributed leaflets signed by a small group of survivors like themselves who were affiliated with the Israeli left wing. And what I remember of this leaflet is their demand: stop merchandising the Holocaust. I think it was the first time that I saw the phrase or this combination of words in such a way. So then, just as it is today, when I say merchandising the Holocaust, I refer to the way that Israel has been using that undeniable dark chapter, global and Jewish history, in order to justify the Israeli repression and dispossession of the Palestinians, something that has been taken long for 8 decades or more already. By merchandising the Holocaust, I think of how Israel has taken over ownership over the murdered Jews, including my grandparents, my uncles, my aunts, my nephews and nieces that I never knew, in order to silence and actually incriminate any criticism of Israeli policies against the Palestinians, and to incriminate any resistance to Israeli policies. So just as an example, let me mention 2 statements. Or rather, the statements reflect a frame of mind, an Israeli frame of mind that has become an axiom or even a fixed pillar in the Israeli manufacturing of reality. One statement is that the genocide perpetrated against the Jewish people in Nazi-dominated Europe is the worst of all incidents in humankind's known history. This is one statement that you hear a lot. The other statement is also heard a lot whenever a Jew is attacked or killed in an attack. He or she was killed only because he or she is Jewish. You hear it often. You hear it in connection with the victims of pogroms in the Ukraine, for example, beginning of the 20th century or at the end of the 19th century. Just as much as you hear it when in regard to Israeli civilian victims or even military victims of a Palestinian armed attack. And you hear it also, we heard it in school, when I was in school, that the Holocaust is explained that Jews were killed because they were Jewish, only because they were Jewish. And the same phrase has been used and has been heard also in connection with the Hamas attack on October 7. This attack was horrific, no doubt. And thousands of people directly suffer from it until now. Thousands of people in Israel. I'm not talking right now about the millions who suffer from it, so following it in Gaza and the West Bank because of Israeli retaliation. These thousands of people who were directly affected by the attack on October 7 include Israeli Jews, Palestinians who are Israeli citizens, and tens of families of migrant workers who were attacked as well. So from the start, the statement that they were killed only because they were Jewish is not true. But this is not the only reason that this statement is false or misleading. It does great injustice to the weak, vulnerable, and defenseless minority that the Jews were in Europe because it equates them with a state that is a military superpower. This equation distorts history. It distorts, but very conveniently for many Israelis, for most of the Israelis, majority of the Israelis, because the way that this sentence was emotionally adopted by many concerning October 7 fit very well into a typical Israeli forgetfulness. It serves the Israeli typical forgetfulness about the relationship between us and the Palestinians. We forget that we expelled the Palestinians from their homeland. And we forget that when the PLO opted for peace in the 1990s, more than 30 years ago, it opted for peace, and it opted for peace based on the establishment of a Palestinian state alongside Israel. But Israel, as a response, Israel only enhanced the colonization process of Palestinian territory, which is so obviously just against any logic of peace and any logic of reconciliation. Most of the Israelis prefer to completely ignore this fact. Israelis do not want to know about the years of humiliation and economical deprivation that we placed Palestinians over even during, especially after Oslo. We don't want to remember they are dead and wounded by the Israeli army and by settlers. Israelis also easily forget that their state has carried out a policy of disconnecting Gaza from the West Bank long before Hamas came to power. It's a myth when people say that disconnecting Gaza is because of Hamas and because of the Hamas military attacks since the 2000s. This is a lie because it started long before. And Israel has made Palestinians in Gaza into inmates in a big open prison. So all these things have been forgotten or has been completely neglected or ignored by most of the Israelis. And this is one of the reasons why when after October 7, people on the left demanded to see the context, we were exposed, we were attacked as if we support or at least justify the attack. But one does not need to be a supporter of the armed struggle or Hamas in order to see the tragic connection between years of deprivation and Israeli policies and the fact that thousands of disfranchised people stormed out of their prison and took revenge. Now, as for the first phrase that I mentioned before, the Holocaust is the worst of all. Each period and area has its horrors. I think we are all aware of it. And I personally refuse to place human suffering in an hierarchical order. I cannot say that my grandmother and my nieces who were put in a gas van in Belgrade and strangulated to death by the Nazis, that their suffering is more or less than the suffering of Africans who were taken as slaves and died or almost died in the trip between Africa to the Americas. I refuse to say that one suffered less or more than the other. I refuse to accept that the suffering of my neighbors here, Palestinian neighbors who have been for more than 80 years displaced and pressed by Israel, that their suffering is less or more than my family. Don't take me wrong. For sure, there were unique elements in the Nazi subdivisions of humankind. And the planning and the meticulous industrialization of mass murder committed by Nazi Germany are until today a valid subject for research on all levels: psychological, historical, economical, you name it. But at the same time, when we do think about the manufacture and planned industry, or the planned Holocaust, planned genocide of the 1940s, we should not forget that there was another genocide perpetrated by the German state just a few decades before, about 40 years before the genocide of the Jews, that of African peoples in what has become Namibia. This genocide was also planned. It also followed an order from above, though it lacked the industrial element that was so typical of Auschwitz. In a perverse way, this genocide has drawn less attention from the world than the Holocaust, because the killing of the African peoples had a colonialist logic of profit and territorial gain, while the logic and profit, the logic of profit that was from killing 10 million people in Congo under the Belgian rule, while the plan to eradicate the Jews in Europe and other parts of the world always stood out as being illogical, even contrary to Germany's war interest. Or the logic was about the illogic of it, not a material logic that could be seen in real time. Yes, today it is different. There is a growing research and mention of the hundreds of millions of victims of European colonialism and slavery. But still, the world wells into this concept that there is nothing as terrible as the atrocities perpetuated against the Jews. So it seems to me very convenient until today for the elites of the leading Western countries, such as the United States, Britain, and Germany, to focus especially on the Holocaust as something unique, something out of history, something that was compensable and was indeed compensated. For individuals and military support. So something that is unprecedented, unique, the significance of its centuries-old colonization and deprivation of non-European, non-white people. Now, this support of Israel reaches the extreme and unbearable tolerance to Israel's violation of international law, and it reaches complicity with the genocidal war against Gaza. Not only the West does not stop Israel from bombing civilian population it has been going on for 14 months, but it also supplied Israel with more weapons. And this is always in making connection with the Holocaust. I feel personally, and I think that I also speak in the name of my parents when I say I'm personally offended as a child of survivors by this connection that is made between the Holocaust and the very political justification to assist Israel in its war against the Palestinians. So we see a real unbearable triangle unfolding in front of our eyes. The West adopts the Holocaust as a unique case of human cruelty. It disconnects, very conveniently, it disconnects this period from the roots in the colonialist times, from which the West profits until today. And it assists Israel in its settler colonial mission of today. And the settler colonial mission that we see very clearly in the acts in the West Bank, in the plans to evict Palestinians or to banish Palestinians from Gaza, and in the total political silencing and political ousting of Palestinians who are Israeli citizens. This is a plan. This is a reality that was not by surprise advocated already 8 years ago by a very prominent politician. He was not so 8 years ago, but now he's one of the most prominent political figures in Israel. This is Bezalel Smotrich. He called it the decisive plan in 2017. And he said the Palestinians should know that they cannot, for a national existence in this country between the river and the sea. They have three options. One option is to accept their inferior position as unequal citizens or unequal subjects in a Jewish state. Another option is to emigrate, and if they do not accept neither, and will decide to fight, we will fight. Our military and our security organs will know how to fight them and how to quell them. And this is what is being carried out day by day for the past, not only 14 months, because it actually started long before Hamas attack in October 2023. This is, we speak rationally, but inside me, I feel a lot of pain and a lot of helplessness and despair, because we reached a point that we on the left tried to warn about for many years, and we failed. We used to say that in so many ways, that if we do not respect Palestinian basic rights and Palestinian basic expectation to have to start a process that brings forward a chance for living together in this country, and then if we continue to be the colonialist power that we are, then we are doomed to reach a phase of brutality to a point of no return. And it's very difficult for me to end this, but to say that I'm afraid we have reached this point of no return. Thank you.
Amira?
Well, now I hear you, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do like this. Maybe you don't see me because I am just on the side. So I'm just starting again my question. So you are the daughter of Holocaust survivors and you are a journalist covering Palestinian affairs. How do these identities influence your reporting?
Before?
How do these two identities influence your reporting, the way you do your job?
I was born here, so I was born here, and I'm part of this the societies that are here. But of course, when I write, and I live among Palestinians, then it's important for me to tell Palestinians also how history intervened, that our presence here, yes, is part of a settler colonial process that there is no doubt about it. Zionism grew up in an environment of settler colonialism, European settler colonialism, and adopted many of the features and the perceptions of European settler colonialism. But at the same time, Zionism tried to be a response to something very real in Europe, and this is anti-Semitism and the repression of Jews. So it's very important for me to tell Palestinians that if not for genocidal anti-Semitism, most of the Jews preferred to stay in the diaspora. They looked for other options and other solutions to anti-Semitism and not for Zionism. They thought of assimilation, emigration, socialism. You know better than I know about all the possibilities that Jews chose before the Holocaust in order to address anti-Semitism. So when I'm speaking in favor of taking history into account, I also do this when I speak to Palestinians. And at the same time, I feel that it's not only my identity as child of survivors, but also because I grew up in a leftist family, that the axiom never again is meant for everybody. It's not just restricted for one people. So it made me, of course, more sensitive to repression, to the repression than I think than maybe people who were not raised in this mixture as I was. But as a whole, I live here, so I have a responsibility for the histories and for the present of the two peoples.
Thank you, Amira. I'm going to go back to the audience.
So if I say my question, maybe you can repeat it to Amira.
Amira, do you hear this? Did you hear the lady?
I do. So far, I do. Yeah.
So you mentioned a historical point of everything being perceived as being targeted as a Jew. And we all experienced on October the 7th the collective emotional shock and trauma experienced in Israel and around the world. So there is a kind of like collective emotional orientation where we are targeted. But how is this kind of weaponized so that, that we, to me, there seems to be a process whereby it creates a form of genocide denial now in Gaza, of the emotional orientation of we are the victims, the only victims, is a way of not seeing what happens in Gaza. Is this a real dynamic that feeds people not being able to see the suffering in Gaza and in Palestine because, like, out of a feeling of like existential fear, it's them or it's us? I don't know if that was clear.
Yeah, it's as I try to say, this is this equation or this claim that we are targeted because we are Jewish and not for any other reason started before October 7. So it is a typical way of Israel to push any or to blur the significance of our repression and the place that the anti-repression or the Palestinian forms of resistance. I mean, I don't have to agree with everything, but the Palestinians resist their repression. So it is to decontextualize it, to make it into something that is like a constant, a historical constant. People are against us because we are Jewish and not because what we are doing to them. And of course, about the refusal to see what we are doing really in Gaza, it is of course the mood was like, yes, look at 7th of October, they deserve it, or there is no Palestinian, all the Palestinians are supporting Hamas, all the Gazans support Hamas, or Hamas is using the Palestinians as human shields. All this is said in many ways, in many levels, all the time. It was said before 7th of October, and the 7th of October became, because it was so atrocious, it even strengthened this mood. But when you think about it, how the festival that took place near Gaza, and that many of the victims were participating in this festival, it shows to what extent Israelis just don't see how abnormal this reality is, how abnormal it is to continue and occupy the Palestinians in all the ways we do. And then it was this abnormality burst out in the most, in a very cruel way, but again allows the Israelis not to see the abnormality of our repression.
Thank you, Amira. Another. Alors, nous avons des questions de YouTube. On va en prendre une question du streaming. So we'll take one question from the streaming.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So yes, Amira, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we have a question from the live, and it says, in your view, how has the Holocaust been commercialized in political and economic spheres? And if you could share an example of the merchandising that you mentioned earlier that is undermining genuine historical reflection. And the second question is that you mentioned that there was a point of, we're reaching a point of no return, or we have reached it. What do you think sort of comes after that for the state of Israel and the Palestinian people?
I'll start with the second one. The rift, I guess I was very harsh, and that's how I feel. because the rift and the cleavage that has been created since in the last 14 months is very deep and is right now seem almost unbridgeable. I see it how Israelis are standing behind, most of the Israelis standing behind the government in its humiliation of, in its demonization of all Palestinians. And I see it among Palestinians who um, refuse to acknowledge that the 7th of October, the horrors of the 7th of October, especially because Israel immediately resorted to this genocidal war against their people in Gaza. So emotionally and in terms of perceptions and analysis, we are very few who share the same kind of analysis or worldview. Right now, it seems that the most radical thing to say is that there are two peoples between the river and the sea. I mean, this is a truism. This is something which is obvious, which is a fact, but it has become something radical. And unfortunately, politically, you don't see a new political mess emerging in Israel that is more than just anti-Bibi, anti-Netanyahu, or anti-Smotrich, but that understand that the core of the problem is the insistence of Israel to be a settler colonial entity and to continue to be a settler colonial entity after the signing of the Oslo Accords. At the same time, there is no real political gathering among Palestinians. You have or a unified strategy that is now directing them. There are conflicting statements, conflicting views about the future. There is adoration of Hamas on the one side. There is a lot of anger at the Palestinian Authority that in the eyes of many reached the point of direct collaboration with Israel. There is a total loss, political loss, and no political cohesiveness. I guess that it'll take time and this will be fixed, but we don't have much time. And the Israeli right-wingers, the messianic religious right-wingers and settlers have a free hand to bring the West Bank into to make the West Bank boil as well. And the army, even though politically understands the dangers of it, follows the diktat of this very strong, politically strong group of the settlers. So yeah, this is when I'm talking about no return. This is it's unfixable in the old ways. And we need a lot of political change, political assertiveness and political creativity that does not exist right now, especially when we have Trump in power and we have a weakened Europe that was not able to even get near to its slogans of human rights or two states, etc. Now, the first question is, in a way, you want me to develop what I started at my presentation, the merchandising, or you say commercializing the Holocaust. I think that Nurit will speak later on about this. It's, I'll give you an example. Every visitor who comes to the country, first thing is taken to the Yad Vashem Museum. So this is emotional manipulation. It's like they're not taken they are not taken to see the tens of communities of Palestinians that have been evicted in the West Bank in the last 2, 3, 4 years because of settlers and army violence. They're not taken there. They are not taken to speak with, to see how Palestinian Jerusalem was turned into slums because of Israeli policies. They are taken, first of all, to see Yad Vashem. So it's an emotional extortion. I remember in the beginning of in the mid of the 90s, when everybody was still hopeful about, or almost everybody was hopeful about Oslo, I was very skeptical because I was in Gaza and I could see that Israel was not heading towards this phase of peace or of a Palestinian state alongside Israel, and that's when Israel started to implement a very harsh closure on Gaza. Norwegian diplomat told me that whenever he raises the issue of closure and privation of Palestinians from their freedom of movement, he's always mentioned that Norway had Quisling. So this kind of emotional extortion is always there. Is always more innuendo or less innuendo. Is always there and used by Israel. The language that is used by politicians. I see Facebook now; it's full with Hamas are Nazis. Like people who follow me know how much criticism I had of Hamas way and of the way that it went on a military attack without any clear political strategy and neglected the Palestinians in Gaza to Israel, to what it knew that Israel would ferociously retaliate and actually carry out old plans. But to call them Nazis is again to show disrespect to our families in Europe who are completely defenseless and divorced of any political power under Nazi Germany. So this is everywhere we go. We could you can face it.
Thank you, Amira. We have time for a short question and a short answer if you want to ask your question. Really short, we have 2 minutes.
You mentioned the music festival as an example of this illusion that the Israelis don't see the abnormality of the repression. And in your experience, do you see any glimpses or any times where this illusion breaks? And is it people who are like, could it be like people who are Jews in the diaspora, or is it soldiers who are in direct connection, or more to the?
Yes, sorry, I think yeah, you heard everything, yeah?
Yes, I did. Right now, it seems that people are more entrenched in their older views, and even there is a phenomenon of people who are considered left or consider themselves left, and we call them those who have sobered up. They are now have joined the choir of seeing the problem in the Palestinians and in the Hamas attack, and not seeing it as part of the problem of Israeli policies and Israeli repression. So right now, yeah, of course, we know, and you know, I mean, there are voices in Europe among Jews and in United States, but it doesn't have the political power, I want to say yet, but so far it doesn't have a political leverage. Morally, philosophically, principally, it was very impressive to see the demonstrations. I don't want to speak now. I mean, about the some of the slogans on some of the tendencies that I cannot sympathize with, like those who really think that the solution is the disappearance of the Jewish presence in the country. But so far, we see it hasn't gained any political leverage. I feel this is our great misfortune now, that all the opposition and resistance to Israeli policies, settler colonial policies, right now there is no real political leverage vis-a-vis it.
Thank you, Amira. I think now we have to go to Nurit. So you can stay online. We'll be happy if you could stay online, Amira.
I'm staying online, yes.
Thank you. Great. And